Phoenix at the Phoenix Convention Center on GMID Day 2025. Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Gardner, your host at Hospitality Today Live, and my special guest here, Kevin Coffey, the actually former LAPD detective and now the travel safety expert throughout the entire world. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thanks, Deborah. It's great to be here today, work with you. As I mentioned up on the stage, I think I first spoke at the MPI Sunbelt chapter probably 27 years ago. It's like my second MPI chapter, back when I had hair.
Right. Exactly. So you are our keynote speaker today on risk management, which you are an expert at and always have the audience in shock about all the information that you bring, all the videos that you bring, and you even brought AI to the table here this time as well. I haven't seen that one before, but it was very, very exciting. You brought up some really interesting points, and I wrote a bunch of notes down because of it at the same time. Yeah, I did, and I want to talk about some of the things that we want to share, that those that were not there, just so you know, you should have been there. But I mean, things that I thought were very relevant, because we are living in a different world. And the travel industry is completely different. The meetings and events industry is different. Can you kind of talk about and share a little bit of what you shared with us here at MPI?
Absolutely. But I'm going to go back and change that statement you just said. You said the world has changed. It has in some ways, but in many of them, and the majority of them, these are the same issues that have been impacting the meeting and event industry for 30, 40 years. But a lot of us within this vertical just haven't taken notice. For instance, and you heard me say this on the stage, when you take a look at the reporting of the typical incidents, risk incidents that impact meeting professionals on the vendor side, as well as supplier side, they're medical, they're trips and falls, they're missing property, there's packages that didn't get there in time as far as that. It's a very small number when it comes down to criminality, crime issues for, a lot of people ask about active shooter, active assailant.
Right.
Yes, we're seeing this unique numbers of events. But we're also seeing an increased number of earthquakes. I showed you the slide. What's going on in my home state of California? What's going on in Texas? What just happened in Bangkok, right, with tornadoes? So these were a lot of issues that impact meeting professionals and trying to get them to understand the importance of risk and why they need to be more involved.
Amazing. And you're right. There are a lot of things that are still going on today that the industry has not been able to embrace. Until the pandemic, then it started waking up our industry a little bit more, but not enough, like you said, in order to stay up to par. And I was stunned, absolutely stunned, when you asked the audience questions like, how many of you have a medical plan process? Maybe 3 hands went up. How many?
And that was for the international, even asked for international.
Right. And how many of you have ever seen anybody have a heart attack? And everybody's hands went up. And it's just like, wait a minute, this balance is not correct. If you know that many people are dying or falling at a convention, why don't you have these things in place? And I was very impressed with some of the terms that you brought up. One I thought was very gravitating. It's not a duty of care, it's a duty to care. Explain that a little bit more.
Well, so again, as on those slides you saw me talk about, I tell people the most important reason why we should be addressing risk is because the attendees expect it. Because if something were to happen, and even if it was a smaller issue, the loss of a cell phone, something like that, the first person they usually turn to is going to be the meeting planner or that team. I was going to say, right? So we have a duty to care for them, to provide them some direction and ideas and thoughts. Let's go back. We talked about the medical issue, and I talked about that's the important piece within an emergency plan, a response plan. And I asked the audience, how many of you actually have a written plan? So if something were to happen to one of the attendees, could be in the last day of the event, and the client is not available, what is the protocol that's going to be if they're going to be hospitalized after the event?
Right.
What about the insurance? What's the companies, that the resources that the corporate client has available? Very easy to do,
right,
but at least it provides some direction to help out.
Yeah.
We can even go into different areas that is we talked about, and the importance of putting emergency contact information on the inside of the doors of the meeting and event rooms. So if you recall, you and I are gonna play this story out, for your audience.
Sorry about that. So this
So
one is for travel.
let's just say Deborah's in a room. She's at one of our conferences, whatever that is. She's at the fruit peeler contest convention there. And there's 300 people in the room, and all of a sudden, Deborah, you and I are at a table, and one of the people at the table just has a medical emergency, sudden cardiac arrest.
So the winner is.
We asked the audience, what's the first thing you're going to do? And everyone said, call 911. Well, that's great. 911 is going to have to pay on where that emergency service ambulance or emergency is going to be. It could be 5 to 7, could be 10 minutes. Just depends on where they are, how busy they are.
Right.
On the flip side, the facility
Okay,
is
so
probably
next,
not always going to have an
promotion.
AED, the heart defibrillator.
Our lovely friends
And it's
have
about
a
getting
tote
that
bag
AED device there right away.
with tablets.
We asked the audience, where would you call to get that AED there? No more house phones. Everyone's looking around. So I made that sign that showed on the inside of the
So
door.
our winner is
Here's the number to call.
170.
Right? And how to get it right away, because every minute someone doesn't get a resuscitation through an AED or CPR reduces their chance of living by
This is what happens
10%.
when you buy
It's
tickets.
all about
friends.
just knowing this information, put it in front.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in an article recently with one of our industry
So this one
magazines.
is
I think it was
celebrating
North
and
Corporate.
introduces our donors.
And the word you said was you have to make it as easy as possible. And in that article, and
We
for
add
those
that
of you,
up as easy and as less expensive as possible.
right, because clients do have their budget line item to stick with. But you mentioned that yes, it's easier if planners should have the numbers on their phone as opposed to calling 911 that takes, like you said, longer to get there. And it's something simple as that.
Let's go ahead and talk about that one there. So, and this is, I didn't get a chance to address that. So,
Well, it's in the article I read recently, and people can go see corporate and incentive travel. And it just came out this month, so that's a good reference. Oh, well, there you go. I've been doing my homework.
Let's walk through that for your audience. So again, whatever emergency or issue happens, when I asked the meeting planner, what would you do? Well, I would call my on-site convention services manager. And I think, well, what if it was a true emergency? Well, I'm probably going to call them too. Well, what if the convention service manager is on the phone? Maybe they're in the bathroom.
Right.
They're not going to answer the phone.
Right.
Every minute counts. So putting the phone number to the security desk that's usually 24/7 of the hotel, of the convention meeting event center, so it goes right to them to say, this is what's going on.
Our next
Very few people put that directly into their phone, so it's a quick dial.
Right there.
Very simple thing. What it's saying.
It's all about something that makes it simple and easy. I know when I'm on stage, I have this necklace that's really not a necklace. It's actually a device. Because as a professional speaker like you are, from the stage, we can see everything. So if one of our audience members happens to choke on a piece of bacon during breakfast, I can see that. And all I have to do is tap that little button, and it contacts 5 different people. It could be my client, it could be 911, it could be my dog, it could be whoever I program it to. And those are the things we have to look for. And what's going to make it easier for you instead of being afraid of it. I think a lot of clients and meeting planners, event planners are out there, they're afraid to try it and making a mistake. But at the same time, that's what's going to save people. Bottom line, it's a duty to care. And I love that.
And the last thing I'll kind of leave you on that whole subject is that, as you heard in my presentation,
and this one again is JW Marriott. This one is
a lot of time or a lot of money. There's a lot of resources, especially if you're an MPI member. They have that great guide. It's over 100 pages that you can use to take a look at. And I like to call these a Chinese menu. You know why? Because you pick what makes sense to you. Right? Because depending on the size, the type of organization, all of these things may not fit. So you can pull that out to help build smaller checklists and ideas to put in place.
Fit your
whatever it is. You
and
don't have
visit
to
his
have this big
authority.
manual that nobody's going to read.
Right.
You're going to build certain pieces that make sense to fit you
Right.
and your organization.
Right.
And your
Prize is
Very true.
original
And you went
Southern
on to
Cross
talk
Vegas,
about
3 days, 2 nights
from
stay
hackers
in the
to
movie tower,
active shooters.
and
I mean, there
$100
is a whole
store
laundry
credit.
list of things. We could have been here all day
So this
talking
one is
about.
203.
And I know when you do your training, it depends on what the client is really looking for
203.
to zero on in. But there is a lot under risk management. And I loved what you did today, too, because you can't get into that training bit today. But how you
Let's see,
feel,
we have
how do
2
you think
more
about things?
until
How
our
do you,
next
thinking
our
about
brand
your
new event.
mindset,
This one is
changing your
from Visit
mindset
Tennessee.
about
It's a
risk
gift
management
basket
so that
filled
you
with
can embrace it
goodies.
easier. I thought that was really brilliant. So
And our winner
congratulations on a
is
fabulous
230.
video today.
Well,
We
thank
loved
you.
it. We
Thank-
loved it.
Thank you for that, Deborah.
So in that sense, can we ask you, what do you see as a future trend coming up in our world of threats, that maybe there's one tip that you think that maybe the average traveler can do to help, not only save themselves, but somebody else if something comes about? Is there something
Yeah, so
new and different that coming up?
Well, we can do that. Matter of fact, so we're shifting gears from my meeting and event presentation to my
To
travel
the,
presentation.
yes,
Because
which
that's
you
the
do.
majority of what I do. I
Exactly.
take travelers on a trip and I show you all the mistakes you make from before you leave the house and all the way through.
Right. So our next
So I'll
travel
do 2
we
of them
have
with you.
525.
So let's go ahead
Friends, to let you
and
know,
let's use the phone.
we still have 3
Usually when I'm on
red
stage, I'll
prizes
have
that
my
we're
phone
going to
and
give
I will
away.
have my
And it looks
passport.
like
Right.
the Las
And I will ask
Vegas
people, what is the most
trips.
important? And by far,
So
everyone raises their hands as the
definitely
passport.
Stay
Farthest
close.
from it. I lose my
Keep
passport while
mingling,
traveling
visiting the
internationally.
dogs.
I
Don't
might
forget
get
to
stuck
check
a
in
day or 2 in that city,
at 4:30.
but life's going to go on.
So get
If you
yours in
lose your
on
phone
time.
while traveling
Visit all the
internationally,
booths and get your
especially in the
signatures.
beginning of your trip,
To do a little of our
You could be
sponsor
devastated.
highlights.
Yes.
because
so it's
Very much so.
understanding what
thank
that looks like
our
when accidents,
sponsors,
be it a
then
lost
allowing them
phone
to come
or a
up
stolen cell
and
phone.
talk
A lot
bit
of times you're
about
not a
their
victim of crime,
business.
just mistakes happen. But people don't necessarily have a way to return phones to you.
So we're gonna
Or
have
let's
them
say your
come up
phone
and
was
just
on its
talk for 1
last
to 2
legs and the
minutes.
battery's
First,
going to die.
it's my pleasure
So
to
I pick it up, you
introduce
can't call it. Right? And
Alicia
depending how well you know
Gilbreth
how to get in,
with
to the
Volunteer
tracking of
Park
your
Animal
phone, you
Rescue
can find me on your Apple or your
to
Android.
share more information about
You
this
need to be able to make it easy for people to identify how to return it. So I'll give you one idea. So for me, if I were to leave my phone here and walk away, and you were to pick it up, if I was to pick up yours, would I know how to return that phone to you if I didn't know you?
Please.
So you pick up my phone, and you can't get into it because of biometrics, but we can't show it on the screen here. But as you can see, you're going to pick it up, power it on. If found, contact. And this is my wife's cell phone number, and it's the email address.
On the dashboard of your screen.
Yeah, it's a widget, and they all do that. You can just simply just search it on Google and do it as far as that.
Okay.
Number 2 is
That's
you can
nice.
see, I also put a business card in the inside of the case.
Okay.
3 is I have a little tag that says return me, and it's a phone number they can call and send FedEx or UPS to the finders and return it back to them.
Okay.
So that's
Nice.
So that's going to be one area.
Okay.
And I'll even tack an extra one on. Is what would your lost or stolen phone recovery process look like when you're traveling? So if it happens at home, life goes on.
Right.
Your husband, partner has their phone,
Right.
and you go into the Apple store and get
Right.
it from that day.
Right.
You're traveling internationally, it doesn't look like that. And then how do you repopulate all of your passwords and stuff? So walking through that phone recovery process for travel, especially internationally.
Okay.
So that's a thing you need to look at, and I talk about that. The last one I'll leave you is the one that I think is probably the biggest mistake travelers make, and this is both on business and leisure. You're a big traveler like me. I think you've heard my story before. I have so many frequent flyer miles. So next time my boss tells me to go to hell, the trip's going to be free, right? It's as far as that. You've also do a lot of international travel.
Right.
And I'm not going to front you on this question, but I will do it to the audience. Is how many of them, how many of you, before you travel internationally, have actually reached out, contacted your personal health insurance provider, and asked them, I'm going internationally, what does my insurance look like? What coverage does it provide once I leave the United States?
Okay.
And then walk through the gaps, and you have to have specific questions that you need to ask them, because on these insurance companies, they're great at answering questions. They're not great at saying, is there anything else you need to know? They're just going to get off that call as quick as possible.
Okay.
So researching that, because most of the insurance policies, depending on everyone's medical, everyone's different, depends on what you pay for. You may not have any coverage at all for international travel.
Right.
They might tell you, you have to pay everything yourself out of pocket and then bring the bills back to us. The challenge is, if you have a significant injury, say we're down in Cancun, Cabo, we're in Spain, we're anywhere, and we get a traffic accident, a taxi cab, and end up with a significant head injury or unconscious. Some of these hospitals, if they're private, they want money up front. So this is where we're researching this, not just for us, but for our loved ones, our kids, adult children, kids study abroad.
Wow.
So little thoughts to open up.
Never thought of that.
Here's a last nugget.
Okay.
Only because we're at that age. For our parents, they're, they
Let's
travel.
welcome Jeremy
Medicare does not cover
to the stage to tell us
international
more
travel.
about green
And
screen.
so many
Give it
seniors,
up for
when they travel
Jeremy.
on cruises, if something happens to them, there's no insurance in Medicare for international.
Interesting. Okay.
You're going to have to use your personal insurance, which there's not a lot when it's travel international,
Okay.
or you're going to have to get travel insurance, but trying to find the right gap. So
Oh my
for
God.
those of us that are parents travel, just make sure we look at that, because we're going to have to deal with it if they don't take care of business.
Wow. Well, this is why we're putting your information down in the tickler, because there is so much that you can cover. And you did here today as well. We're so grateful. So I just have one more question for you. And that is, what does GMID 2025 mean to you personally?
Personally, empowering meeting professionals to acknowledge the responsibility that they have to their attendees.
Powerful.
It's all about risk.
Yes, it
And
is.
understanding.
Taking care of each other, taking care of people that we work with, people that we care about and love at the same time. So-
Sam, can I ask you one last question?
Sure.
You're going to swim the channel between Los Angeles and Catalina Island.
The cat's out of the bag. Big risk.
When is that going to
Big risk. October 7th and 8th, and I'll be talking to you before that.
Wow, that is incredible.
There's a lot of risk involved. So 21 miles.
miles.
So you bring up a good point. Not only does risk management apply to our business life, but again, our personal life. So we don't think about that. So yeah, it's a huge risk, and I've been afraid of it for multiple years, and now I've built up my confidence, and I've had a great supportive team and coaches that are really driving this at the same time. So you'll hear more about that.
Risk versus reward.
Yes.
And that there's a huge reward.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well, thank you so much for being with us. This was such a pleasure here downtown Phoenix, Arizona at the Phoenix Convention Center. You can see we're right here in the middle of the expo going on. And what better keynote speaker than Kevin Coffey? If you want to reach him, there's all his information, and please do. You will be glad you did. There's no doubt about that. But this has been a great GMID 2025 celebration. We've got more interviews coming up at the same time, even some puppies. We got to go get the puppies for sure. We'll do that. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day, and hoping you are celebrating GMID Day wherever you are. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lauren.